Belgium, Panama, Tunisia and England make up the Three Lions group. Robbo, as an Englishman, you must be delighted.
Couldn't be any easier, could it?
Well, famous last word.
I wouldn't say England are a great side at the moment, but they're better, certainly, than the last two that were drawn. Panama are the worst team in the tournament, I would say. So England have got a very comfortable draw.
They'll be delighted with this, won't they, Craig?
I think Roberto Martinez and Gareth Southgate are somewhere in a restaurant in Russia now, opening a nice bottle of red wine.
Sure.
Celebrating, because, I mean, it will be a tussle to see who gets top slot in this group, but, yeah, I would expect those two to easily win this, be the first two to go through.
As a contrarian on the panel, can you make any arguments for Tunisia or Panama?
I think you can make an argument for Tunisia. There's a big gap in class, but we've seen this again at the World Cup. And I remind everybody, England, Uruguay, Italy, Costa Rica in the group, everybody's having a laugh saying which one of the three superpower World Cup winners is going to win the group, and then we saw Costa Rica won it. There are parallels, I think, between Tunisia and Costa Rica in terms of the way they play, in the terms that they can make things tough for you. But really, that is the only way I could see anybody, splitting Belgium and England.
Let's check out Group C, shall we? France, Peru, Denmark and Australia. Before we hear from the boys in the studio, Julien Laurent is with us. Julien, France, got to be loving this.
Yeah, we take that every day. Didier Deschamps and the players really wanted to avoid Spain and England from that pot 2 and a few of the other bigger names in pot 3 and 4, and that's exactly what happened. It reminds me a lot of the 2014 World Cup group stage for France with Switzerland, Ecuador and Honduras as well. I think it should be the same for France. They will get stronger and stronger as the game goes through in the group stages to be ready then for the knockout stage. They'll be very, very happy with that.
Great draw for France, obviously.
Yeah, 3 teams that come through the playoffs, so not great qualifying campaign for those teams. Probably Peru and the most difficult in South America. They would arguably be the second strongest team in there. The Aussies are not at the best, and the Danes rely heavily on Christian Eriksen, so the French are way, way out in front in this group.
France to win the group, obviously. Gav, who's going to finish second?
Yeah, I think it's a tough one because obviously Eriksen can change games, but he can also be a non-factor. And you look at Peru, you have another huge question mark there. Jefferson Farfan at his age, and obviously whatever happens with Paulo Guerrero's done so well in Brazil. And Australia, with the coaching change, it's more question marks, and this is not a particularly talented Australian generation compared to a few years ago.
So did you say anyone that's going to finish second? Or just sort of noise?
I was talking about the different factors, but yeah, no, I think Peru would edge it.
Peru?
Yeah.
Yeah,
even without Guerrero.
Well, now that's where I have an issue. If Guerrero's not available because of this doping allegation, if he is suspended, then I don't see Peru having enough in the attack to make it and pass the group stage. So it is a big point and it's a big caveat for Peru. If Guerrero's available, Peru advances. If not, I think they're very limited in the attack.
Australia aren't going to be good enough to challenge any team. They're not that well organised now. They used to be strong. They used to have 1 or 2 good individuals. They're not that anymore. As Gab said, change of coaching staff as well. And Denmark are uninspiring. Eriksen can, on his day, pick out passes and lead the line or create opportunities, but they're not good enough. Peru will come second.
France. You take a look at the 8 groups, gentlemen. There isn't necessarily one that stands out, that jumps off the page. But let's focus on Group D. Argentina, Iceland, Croatia and Nigeria could be the most competitive.
Well, your eyes go straight away to Argentina, but then you've got to remember back to how poor it was in the qualifying for long periods. That being said, they've got to feel they've got the big game mentality. Iceland and Croatia were in the same group in qualifying. Iceland beat them, top the group, but the Croats are the most talented out of the 2 teams for sure, with all the players they've got. Perisic, Modric, Rakitic, Mandzukic. Their problems lie defensively, and I've got to feel that Argentina, for me, will win this group. And I know it's Iceland's first World Cup. I don't think it's going to be a great World Cup for them. I think the big fight will be between Croatia and Nigeria for the second spot.
And I'd really keep an eye on Nigeria as well. Obviously, they breeze through qualifying. You don't, again, necessarily have the 3, 4, 5 superstars that you had before, but I think what you have is a very well-drilled team. And they showed it. I mean, they played Argentina recently in a friendly, and they more than held their own, obviously.
Yeah.
So I don't think you take anything for granted. On paper, yeah, it's Croatia versus Nigeria for second spot, but you could get some weird permutations.
The thing that you find encouraging about Argentina, other than the fact that you have Lionel Messi in the team, is the idea that you have Jorge Sampaoli with time to really prepare this team, to put together a talented group and actually make it look as a team, not as Messi and 10 other guys on the field. So if that's the case for Sampaoli and he gets that work done, then Argentina should walk through this group. As it pertains to that second place, we have the questions of historically how teams like Nigeria come into the tournament and something happens. Yeah. Everything falls apart. It was great in qualifying, and then they get disorganized. Something happens with the federation. Somebody doesn't get paid, and now all of a sudden this team is in disarray going into the competition.
Different group, different Nigerian group this time, though. I mean,
and I've heard that story before.
Put all this to the side.
Yes, but I've heard that story before.
There'll still be arguments over their bonus payments come the World Cup and are they going to get paid or not?
That's how we've seen it historically. So until I see something different, then it's hard for me to make an argument for them.
Croatia are an interesting team to watch because during qualifying they weren't getting on with the coach. There was a lot of arguments going on behind the scenes. And then they changed their coach for the game, 2 games against Greece.
Dalic coming in.
Dalic came in and he seemed to unite everybody. They played very well against Greece and they've got some talented players, as you mentioned earlier.
Well, they changed their coach one game before the end of qualifying and it was for Ukraine away. It was a win or be out, and they went to the Ukraine and won 2-0. Then they battered a poor Greece team. But they are very talented, the Croats. But again, they themselves can implode within themselves.
I mean, and that's a good point. I mean, if Ali has concerns about Nigeria's squad unity, I think it applies just as much to Croatia with another big factor too. Obviously, we saw what happened at the Euros with the fans. We saw Modric, of course, some of the things he said in his trial. You have a weird situation there where you've got some of the most popular players on the team being entirely unpopular with a big chunk of the fan base, and that could have repercussions as well.
Julien Laurent is with us as well. Julien, what do you think of this group?
Yeah, it's the most exciting for me. I think Nigeria and Argentina have played together each other in the 5 of the last 6 World Cups or something like that. It's crazy. It's the game we have every 4 years. And what's interesting for us, the French as well, is that the group of France will play against the group of that Group D in the last 16. So if France finish first, they play the second of that Group D, which could be Nigeria, which they played already in the last 16 4 years ago. In Brazil, if France finish second, they could play Argentina in the last 16. So that's very interesting for the French as well.
Let's focus on Group F, shall we? Germany, Mexico, Sweden and South Korea. Before we hear the boys in the studio, let's go out to Hercules Gomez. Herc, this isn't ideal, is it, for Mexico?
I feel it's a very difficult group for Mexico. I mean, you're talking about 3 teams that historically they've played against in the World Cup, a Germany team that in Confederations Cup destroyed them. This is a very difficult Sweden team, and this South Korea team is no slouch. I know that historically they've played each other in World Cup. It seems that they've always lost to Germany. They end up tying Sweden, and they'll end up beating South Korea. So the consensus is 1-1-1 in group play, and then to face off as second in that group against Brazil. It's not looking good for Mexico. There is a lot of optimism, though. This is a Mexican team that's only one of 3 teams to advance the last 7 World Cups onto the second round. The thing is, they're not looking for the advancement out of the second round anymore. That's just not good enough for Juan Carlos Osorio and his men. They're looking for that 5th game. They're looking for that quarterfinal spot and more.
I would be a wee bit more positive.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I don't think this is a bad group at all. I mean, albeit, you know, okay, you've got...
Sweden did knock out a poor Italy side.
Let me get there.
Very poor Italy side.
We know I don't want to harp about this Confederations Cup again, but they know Germany beat Mexico with we'll call it a B team, you can call it. But in terms of getting second spot in the group, I don't think this is bad at all.
No?
I think the Mexicans should have more talent than the other 2 teams in this group. I know Sweden put out Italy, but that was to the detriment of Italy's poor performances over the 180 minutes. In South Korea, I think this is actually... I think Mexico will just target second place here, and they, for me, are better than the other 2 teams, or should be better than the other 2 teams in this.
But that's exactly the issue, the fact that they're not going to get any better than second place. And so to Hercules' points, this is the conversation in Mexico is not about getting out of the group, is what you do after that. And if you're going to play Brazil in the next round, then it's game, set, match. Thanks for coming. We appreciate your efforts. We'll see you in 4 years. And that is the reality for Mexico.
I think, I mean, having watched more of Sweden than I care to ever watch, I think it's going to be, I mean, I agree that this is not a particularly gifted Sweden team, but there are wild cards. I think Emil Forsberg, in the same way we talked about Denmark with Christian Eriksen, if Emil Forsberg is on, that's a really tough out, I think, for anybody. And I think critical in that is how you match up. Sweden are a very big team physically. And so I think Osorio is going to have to be clever. I'll tell you what, he's not going to do a worse job than Ventura did against Sweden, because that's frankly impossible. So
don't make it about Italy, Gav.
No,
let it go, bro.
I didn't even bring it up, man. I didn't even bring it up.
Who have you got finishing second then?
I went for Mexico.
Right.
This is not a great Korean team right now. Again, relative to previous World Cups as well.
I followed Sweden throughout their qualifying campaign. They're not a very good side. They want to play very defensively. They want to be compact. I can't see where the goals are going to come from. They did it well against Italy. I saw them play against Holland twice. I saw them play against France twice. I don't think they're a very good side. So for that reason, Mexico have to come second.
Unless he changes his mind.
Who?
And Zlatan comes back.
Oh, here we go.
That'll make all the difference.
That'll make a difference.
How did that work out at the Euros?
Yeah. You touched the ball. Thank you very much, boys, of course, for a lot more content on the World Cup. Keep it here online. Russia, Saudi Arabia, Egypt and Uruguay. That really gets the juices flowing, doesn't it? That is Group A.
Especially the opening game.
Oh, Russia, Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia, just to get the competition up and running.
As much as we mock it and as much as we don't particularly have much interest in it, this is a great draw for the hosts, isn't it?
Well, I say.
What do you mean?
I actually think this
Uruguay?
is...
Well, yeah, but you knew you were going to have a tough draw. You knew there was going to be a difficult team. You take a look at it. If you're Russia...
I don't think there's many good draws for Russia, and I'll tell you why, because Russia for a long time have not been a particularly good team.
Yeah.
For a long time.
They're the lowest ranked team in the tournament. Russia.
There you go.
To support your point.
So, you got Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Uruguay. Uruguay were pretty strong in South American qualifying, and Egypt, while not the most attacking of sides, come through as winners of their group. I'm going to go for Uruguay and
Egypt.
And Russia, the holders, to go out.
But it could have been a lot worse. What I mean as well, in the fact that the opening game is against Saudi Arabia for the Russians. If it was a proper team that could really thrash them, you know, it could just ruin the whole World Cup for them.
Could have been Spain, couldn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
yeah, exactly.
As simple as that. But I mean, in this group, I have Uruguay to win it, but because I'm factoring in the fact that Russia playing at home, you know, you're going to inevitably get a bit of a help, a little bit of a lift, although we didn't see that much in the Confederations Cup. I'll tell you what, I think Egypt are a really, really strong team. They've got, in Hector Cooper, they've got a veteran manager, obviously Mohamed Salah at the back. I mean, I think it's going to be really tough for Russia to get out. I have them second, but it's really 50-50 for me between them and Egypt.
So you've got Egypt as a really, really strong team.
Yeah.
You've got Russia as the worst ranked team in the tournament.
Well, no, I don't have them. FIFA has them as the worst ranked team. No, I think Russia are better than Panama or some of these other teams, but you know, by the FIFA rankings, they are the lowest ranked team in the tournament.
You just made arguments for you and against you, for Russia, against Russia, in the same soundbite. So who are you picking then?
I just said, I have Uruguay winning the group. I have Russia finishing second, but it's extremely close. It's a tough coin between them and Egypt.
It's not that close.
Uruguay, a tournament team.
Yeah.
They know how to do this, whether it's Copa America, whether it's the Commonwealth qualifying, or whether it's World Cup. There is something about Uruguay that you just like in this sort of matches. They're going to finish first in this group. And then after that, Russia?
Convincing, good.
Big game. Russia against Egypt. Egypt should have won the African Cup of Nations. They got to the final. They were the best team in the tournament. They bottled it in the final. They just lost to a Cameroon side that had problems with their coach. That had problems with their organisation. But Cameroon still beat them. So I think Russia will just about beat them in that game. That's going to mean who goes second.
When does it all start? When's the World Cup start, Gav? Do you know?
June 14th.
No, the 15th, actually.
There you are. Well, save you that.
No, the 14th officially, but the 15th.
If I can give a shout out to the fact that my favorite older goalkeeper isn't going to be there, so I'm going to adopt another old goalkeeper in this. Essam El Hadari, 45 years old. He's going to become the oldest player
45 years old?
in the
Egypt
history
goalkeeper
of the World Cup.
Goodness me. All right.
He's going to be on the field?
He's going to be in goal.
Yeah.
Is he older than you?
Okay,
He's older than me, yes.
Wow, Gav. He's aged better, though, probably.
Well,
A lot more World Cup content here online. Group B sees Portugal, Spain, Iran and Morocco all drawn together. Ali, from a Spanish perspective, this could have been so much worse, considering they're in the second pot.
which they should have never have been the second pot to begin with.
Sure.
Let's start there. But When you're Spain, you look at this and you say, well, it's us and Portugal.
Yeah.
And then that's it. And the way that Spain has been playing, and Lopetegui, the transition that he has had for this team, where he has taken this team from what was an older group to now a group that has experience but also has value of younger legs. And that's going to be important for Spain in the competition. I see Spain not only winning this group, but certainly being a major player in the tournament.
Then is it all about Portugal and Morocco as to who's going to finish second?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, got a bit of history with the Moroccans in World Cups. Back in '98 when they beat us to qualify in second place, they thought, but Norway went on and beat Brazil, so they haven't had much luck in that sense. And Portugal again showed at the Euros that they're a big team tournament. We don't know what state Cristiano Ronaldo will be in at that point, but they're a very, very difficult team to beat. They organise themselves well, so I'm going to go for the two European teams.
Yep.
Yeah, in Portugal, I think a tremendous tournament manager in Fernando Santos too. I wouldn't underestimate Iran. You could get a situation where, Morocco, Iran, if this game ends up a draw, then Portugal are laughing even if they lose to Spain. But whichever team wins that game between Morocco and Iran, I think then it becomes a playoff against Portugal, and then things can get I think really interesting. Otherwise, on paper, Spain and Portugal.
Last word to you, Robert.
You can't argue with that. The only thing I would say about Morocco, they've got a coach that's done very well at the African Cup of Nations. He managed Ivory Coast to win the title. I think it was Zambia as well to win the title, so he's a tournament coach. So they may just cause a surprise, Morocco.
Gentlemen, thank you very much, of course, for a lot more on today's World Cup draw. Keep it here online. Brazil, Switzerland, Costa Rica and Serbia make up Group E. For Brazil, obviously they'll be happy with this group. The others will not be as much.
I don't think Brazil were really quaking at the draw anyway, knowing that, ultimately they're a very strong side at the moment. Costa Rica getting out of their World Cup group in 2014, winning it was incredible, so you couldn't write them off. The Swiss, they're organised, but not the best team to watch. And the Serbians, a bit like the Croatians, have got some really talented players, but they've had their own problems as well. So I think it's really close for second place here between all of those three teams. I really think it's too hard to pick one.
Let's take a look at this from a CONCACAF angle, shall we? Hercules Gomez with us. Costa Rica, how are they feeling about this draw, Herc?
Well, I think they feel a lot better about this draw than they did last World Cup draw, being in the group of death. And this Costa Rican team, that has a tendency to surprise. They're a very well-organized team. Defensively, they set themselves up very nicely on the counter. They're disciplined. I wouldn't discount this team taking second place. I know, obviously, Brazil is the favorite for first place, but like Craig said, second place is anybody's go, and Costa Rica has as good of a chance as anybody.
Gab?
I'm very bullish on Serbia.
You really like Serbia. You've been banging on about this.
We always deal in the present. We're talking now on December 1st, but you have to kind of project 7 months down the line. I think there's some players that can grow. I think some of the issues that they've had, which I think are largely behind them already, might go away. And you think about a guy like Milinkovic-Savic, who seems to be getting better by the week. He could be a real force here. And we're still talking about second place and all the provisos. Switzerland, not the kind of team that's fun to play against because of the way they play. Costa Rica, even less fun, given the way they play. But I think there's enough individual weapons in the Serbia team to grab second place.
Well, you made your case for Serbia, and then if you're going to make a case for Switzerland, you watch the playoff against Northern Ireland, you think, well, this team, there's nothing there. There really isn't. I mean, there's some names. Shaqiri may do something here and there, but you have Seferovic playing up top. He cannot finish a chance to save his life. So then, who is it going to be? Is it going to be Embolo that comes in and does something? I just don't see that Switzerland has enough in the attack. And if I'm going to be bored to death, I'd rather be bored to death by a team like Costa Rica rather than Switzerland. So I'll pick Costa Rica to go.
You want to take Serbia? They won't bore you. Well, they're not boring.
You made the argument
and they're
for Serbia.
better than those
I'm
two.
taking Costa Rica. I like Costa Rica better. Pura vida, baby.
I'm going to go for Costa Rica as well.
Just to annoy Gab?
Yeah, I know, I agree with Ali. Switzerland aren't good enough at the moment. They've got some decent players, but not enough going forward. I'm not sure about their coach either. So I think it's going to be Costa Rica to get second place.
Good stuff, boys. Thank you very much. For a lot more, of course, on today's World Cup draw. Keep it here online. 60 minutes. We'll start, though, by focusing on the draw and what happened. Here it is in all its glory. Craig, what was your first takeaway, your first feeling when you saw all these teams drawn together?
I've seen more exciting matchups in previous World Cup draws, but it is what it is. Obviously, the Russians will get it kicked off with the opening game against Saudi Arabia, but I think the French have who a lot of people think could go there strong with a really young, dynamic team. I've got a very good group. And anybody, England as well, if you're looking at England and the pressure they're normally under, they, along with Belgium, have got what on paper seems like a pretty comfortable group.
I think what you're seeing is the effects of the change. No more geographic pots, but straight ranking throughout. And I think one of the byproducts of that is that, you know, you've got, I don't think any of the big teams can complain about having a really, really tough draw. And in fact, weirdly, actually, Russia probably they could have had a tougher one, but, you know, it's still not the best draw for them. So in that sense, you could say the rankings work.
You go back to Brazil, and so then Germany beats Argentina in the World Cup final. Now you start looking ahead to Russia. And of course, the first game is Russia, Saudi Arabia, and then your reaction is, oh,
come on, Ali.
Come on.
Where's your World Cup spirit?
Russia, Saudi Arabia to start off the World Cup. Come on. That was my first reaction. Oh, come on. We've been looking forward to this, and this is the first game we need to watch. Come on.
Oh, but they're looking forward to it in Russia.
Yeah.
Well, yes, in Russia,
It might not be a great tournament for them, so why not open the World Cup?
They'll take it. Robbo?
Gareth Southgate is the luckiest man alive. He's lucky to be in the England job. They've got the easiest group going.
Wow.
It's England should get through that group quite easily. So that's the first thing I thought. England very lucky.
OK, from one Englishman to another, Ian Darke is with us. Ian, what did you make of the draw?
Doesn't it, for the big teams, except Argentina? That could be a bit of a tricky ride. But, you know, the one thing you've got to expect at the World Cup is surprises. Who would have thought 4 years ago that Italy and Spain and England would all go out at the group stage and that Costa Rica would top a group? So we can sit here now, but all those teams did something to get there, and one or two of them, I think, are going to produce a shock or two along the way. And Russia, the host nation, I think one of the guys said it there, that might not be a formality in that group against Egypt and Uruguay.
Let's tentatively welcome Taylor Twellman into the show, shall we? Taylor, Gab watched this with expletive-ridden sentences talking about how Italy aren't there and how much of a farce it is. How did you cope watching this draw as an American?
Thanks, Dan. Everybody else gets to have fun today, and you want to come here with this. So that's how we're going to do this?
Well, I feel like it would be rude not to ask you that first.
Yeah, well, I am wearing my red jacket. I'll say this. I'm sick to my stomach. It was disgusting. I woke up this morning after 3 hours of sleep here in Seattle watching it. And all that emotion from October 10th, 2017 hasn't really left me, but it showed up today. And if it doesn't motivate the powers that be to not see that and make them sick to your stomach and fix the issues at hand, then they're all in the wrong business, because watching it today made me want to puke. Because when you look at the groups, there's no real group at deaths. I remember 4 years ago, all of us were looking at the draw, and we were arguing over the two groups, you know, which one was more difficult. When I look at this, I agree with everyone on the couch. There's not a single big nation team that should complain at all whatsoever, and that includes Argentina. So Mexico's got a very difficult draw. But I looked at this from the United States, and I'm still sick to my stomach.
You know, on paper, sure, Spain are a fantastic team. I think they're one of the top 3 teams in the world. But they would rather not have faced Cristiano Ronaldo in the first game. The other thing to consider with Spain, too, is that at some point, the Sergio Ramos, Gerard Piqué partnership at the back is going to crack, is going to need replacing. And, you know, sometimes when you have veterans who've been there, who've done that for so long, making the decision when to put them to one side and when to stick with them, I think that is a lot for Julian Lopetegui to take on.
Portugal have leaned so heavily on Ronaldo. OK.
Can they win the World Cup, Portugal? Sorry? Can they win the World Cup?
No. I know he went off injured in the Euros and they got the job done. That was a big surprise, beating that French team. He went off injured and they kept their game plan, and we know what they do. They sit in, it's not pretty to watch. But, you know, another sort of 12, well, since the Euros, 2 years down the line. But more importantly, look at Ronaldo. We've talked a lot in the show. Look at him this season, right? We keep asking, when's it going to come back? Is it going to come back? So this could be a Portugal side that's literally, I'm not carrying him with the wrong word, but hasn't got a Ronaldo who is nowhere near as influential. And I think that's going to be a huge problem for them.
Yeah, but Dan, I'm not 100% sure Mexico's a given to get out of this group, because the biggest talking point will be whether or not Zlatan Ibrahimovic returns to Sweden. Now, listen, Sweden, surprisingly, sorry, Gab Marcotti, They got past Italy, and very few people had expected that, but their attack has never been that dangerous. If Zlatan comes in, he gets fit for United, and he pulls in that last, whatever, 2-3 games out of him, and he shows up there in Russia, I'm not sure Mexico's a given to get out of that. And yes, rightfully so, they'll ultimately face Brazil. But wait, defending champions Germany, I was going through their stats given to us by Paul Carr, 16 straight World Cups, they've gotten to the quarterfinals. That's the most insane streak in all of sports, Dan, that I've ever seen. Mexico had high hopes of maybe getting into the group of maybe Russia, Poland. They got the 180 degrees opposite with Germany and Sweden in that group. And South Korea, that has traditionally been a difficult team to beat at the World Cup stages.
Now let's talk about Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Is it a possibility, Gavin? Could he come back? And what sort of difference does it make?
I think the manager's on the record saying that, no, these are the guys who got us here. He retired. He's not part of our plans. The thing is, it's easy to say that now. There's a lot of stuff that can happen between now and June. And if he finishes the season strongly, if he wants to come back, if his teammates, say, look, guys, we have a shot here. We have a better shot with the big man than the other big man like Berg and Toivonen we have playing up front, then I think anything can happen. As of right now, though, he's come out, I think, quite clearly. And
Sweden were built on team spirit and organisation, and I think this is one thing that could kill that.
Really?
You've got guys that, yeah, absolutely. If you've got guys that have taken you through a qualifying campaign and through a playoff doubleheader against Italy, and then you get biffed at the World in the squad for this guy to come in, who, by the way, when they played at the Euros, was so isolated it was unbelievable. I don't think Ibrahimovic himself will want to take.
I think one of the deciding factors for me, and you have to listen to your star player. The star player, Sweden's best player by far, I think, is Emil Forsberg. And if he feels that he's better off with Zlatan, I think that could help sway things. If he doesn't, then maybe not.
Let's get a German.
Southgate's starting to get his style of football, what he wants to play, with three at the back. They are trying to play out from the back.
Didn't they play, wasn't it 2 0-0 draws?
2 0-0 draws. I'm not saying they're a good side. I'm not saying he's a good coach, but I think they're far too good for the other two teams in the group. Belgium may be a different prospect or proposition, but I think with Belgium, Roberto Martinez is going to be key. They've got great players. It's whether he can get it right, whether he can keep all the egos together. He's got a coach below him that doesn't really do too much in Graham Jones, and he's got Thierry Henry. I don't think he's got that much experience of coaching. And Roberto Martinez has never been to a World Cup. He's done it for ESPN as a panellist, but he's never actually coached. He's never played, and I think that might be a slight problem for him.
You could say his name right.
Yes.
Martinez.
There you go. There it is.
Do you remember those? Do you remember easy games for England? Do you remember that easy game that they had supposedly at the Euros?
The Iceland game, yes.
The Iceland game, they were just going to wipe them off the face and they were going to stroll on. So in some ways, this, I think, puts an added amount of pressure on Gareth Southgate, because the English public were looking at these games, particularly the Tunisia game, and thinking, oh, we just need to turn up and win. And if they don't, even if it's a draw, that's when it gets cranked up.
Ian Dark is with us as well. Ian, how do you feel with your English hat on?
Well, England should qualify from that group. It's about as soft a draw as they could have hoped for. But England have got to get rid of the fear factor that seems to overtake them at every major championship, this series of dismal showings. They need Harry Kane to be the player he is with Tottenham. So far in summers, he hasn't looked good. Euro Under-21, the Euro 2016 tournament. There's got to be a question mark about a few others as well. Danny Rose having an unsettled time at Tottenham. Dele Alli not really doing it for Spurs at the moment. So those would be worries for Gareth Southgate. I'm with Stuart, though, about the defence. I think that's improving, that three-man defence. Stones has been majestic this season. Maguire looks good alongside him. Joe Gomez is coming through. Phil Jones, if they can keep him fit. I think that back three played a full-strength Brazil side and kept them out with some ease in that game. That might be something to take encouragement from going forward into the knockout stages.
So I love Senegal. I don't know why they're bottom here, because this is a team that's had experience in the Cup of Nations. They have Sadio Mane, they have Koulibaly, they have Kouyaté in midfield, plus Idrissa Gueye. I think there's some real quality in this team. And you look at the opposition, and I place Colombia top, but then after that, I think they can get there. Now, Poland are an interesting side. I thought they've played some really good football at the Euros as well. Adam Nawalka is a smart manager. Lewandowski obviously gets you a ton of goals, and they've been at it, and they've been together for a time. But I think it's going to come down to Poland and Senegal, basically, for second spot.
What do you think of this one?
Yeah, I didn't get Japan as even as the third team in that, to be honest with you. I'm with Gab here. I think Senegal and Poland for second spot. Poland rely heavily on, obviously, the big striker from Bayern Munich. But Gab mentioned the players playing for Senegal. On any given day, those players are match winners.
I'm going to go for Senegal. African Cup of Nations. They should have won that. They got knocked out in the semi-final. They're a top side. They've got good players. And if they get it right, they cause problems for all these teams.
It'd be interesting to see Colombia and what version of Colombia we see in the World Cup. If we take it back to Brazil, how this platform served to take James Rodriguez from a good player to now, all of a sudden, a superstar. And in terms of what the perception was for him as a player. Colombia is a talented team. And it's a team that in a tournament like this, I expect them to be successful in the group stage. After that, they may be a little limited, but certainly good enough to be first in this group. I think second place is going to go to Senegal. I don't believe in Poland. I don't really see this team being a Pod 1 team. We can get into that discussion some other time, but it certainly seems like a weak Pod 1 team. Colombia and Senegal to advance.
Here is the draw for the knockout stages, according to Gab, then. Mr. Marcos, you look at this, who has got the easier of the paths of the big sides, would you suggest?
Probably Brazil, I would guess.
Yeah, Brazil have got a nice route pretty much in the semi-final, haven't they?
That they'll definitely beat Mexico in the round of 16. France, I think Nigeria, if it is Nigeria, could be a trap game, and obviously either of the other two, I think, could be dangerous. Heavyweight matchup coming in the top right corner, Spain and Argentina, possibly.
Sure.
And in the quarters, obviously that's going to be huge. And an old favorite, Germany, England.
Yeah. We know how that ends. We know how that ends.
You take a look at the left. You prefer to be on the left side, wouldn't you, of that bracket? Most definitely to the right. Brazil and France really the only standout sides.
Spain, Argentina, Germany.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely.
You were going to throw England in there, but you stopped.
You stopped, didn't you?
No, that's fair enough.
I just put the brakes on when I got down to Colombia. I just hit the brakes.
and that was that. Cup show, so it'd be rude not to go back to 1998, wouldn't it? And relive some of the greatest moments from a certain gentleman on the couch. Look at that. That's not Photoshop, by the way. That is real, proper bleach. Did you do your eyebrows as well? You did your eyebrows.
Look at that, stretching.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, look at the pain.
Very important to stretch.
I've seen that clear before.
Wow.
That's before your back went, wasn't it?
That's quite something, isn't it?
That's beautiful.
Oh, I might do it again, actually.
You haven't got enough of it anymore.
Well, you colour it enough anyway, don't you? Keep those greys at bay.
Can't hear you.
Right, exactly.